Alright, let's get into this. So, you see how her first instinct was to comfort herself for feeling bad after something she did, or rather didn't do? This is actually a display of sloth. She is avoiding doing something good for another person, not because she has an actual excuse, but just because she chose not to, for a reason that she herself doesn't know. This situation clearly makes her uncomfortable with herself, but not enough to where she feels she has to do anything about it. Obviously, she knows what she should have done, but she didn't do it. If only there was a virtue that could have resolved the cause of this cognitive dissonance for her. So what is diligence, and why does it matter in this video about sloth? Well, diligence is actually considered the opposing virtue of sloth. When we talk about what sloth is and how to prevent it, we want to look directly at the virtue of diligence to understand how we can grow and become better people. So, to define diligence, we want to think about it as someone that knows what needs to be done and puts effort into making it happen. But how do we know what needs to happen? We'll get into that later. First, we want to understand how a diligent person would have acted differently in this situation. We're coming into this situation with the understanding that she has no reason to refuse parting with her precious gems. Clearly, she has plenty to spare. We understand that sloth is the avoidance of cultivating the goods of love, or refusal to do acts of kindness and love for others. So it makes sense that diligence would be actual effort being made, not out of obligation or feeling like you have to, but because these actions are not only done out of love, but because they also show love to the community. It's important to know that she should give enough to make a positive impact, but she should not be giving so much that she is now at a financial disadvantage. So instead of refusing to give any amount of the excess wealth she has, she might consider giving enough to help him, because honestly, she has nothing to lose here from doing so. And by doing this, she wouldn't be walking away feeling guilty, confused, and mad at herself. Let's get into the next scenario. Wow, that was a lot. So, we have someone who really put themselves out there, to say the least. Ultimately, she was rejected. Happens. What brings up red flags is her reaction, specifically her thought process. She gets rejected, and immediately it's this whirlwind of, he's an awful person for rejecting me, he's probably doing awful things, I'm lucky to have dodged a bullet, kind of anything that might save her from her feelings of inadequacy. She's not saying any of this because she really believes he's a horrible person, or that she's actually lucky. It's all an effort to distract herself from the rejection, blaming him for not seeing how amazing she is, and even proposing the idea that someone said something about her to him that might have caused this rejection. Instead of just accepting that he doesn't love her, this entire self-pitying spiral is the result of indulging in her sadness, and not allowing herself to be reasonable about this. Because if she was being logical, she would have to admit that he doesn't love her, and that he doesn't want to be with her. These are both facts that she is not strong enough to admit, and so, inside her head, she's lashing out at anyone for not understanding her greatness. Here, Sloth is presenting itself as this downward lethargic spiral she's falling into due to deep sadness and pain after rejection. In this scenario, nothing is being asked of her, but she's still letting herself fall into this trap of "I'm pathetic" because she can't emotionally handle the situation. She's losing her sense of reason because of her frail emotional nature. So, let's get our hands dirty. How can we fix this situation when there's nothing that's physically must be done? Nothing's being asked of her, but she still falls into a slothful pit. Well, I would like to introduce the concept of prudence to help support diligence here. Prudence, another virtue, helps us out because it has to do a little more with reason and perhaps a bit more with concepts of introspection and balance. It also has to do with thinking about whether an action is good or bad for us. Diligence gives us the answer that we need to do something, we need to act better, but prudence is vital to understand why what we're doing is not good for us and what path we should set ourselves on. In this scenario, what would help her the most is not to refuse to be sad, but to understand that rejection is not anyone's fault. It just is what it is. She has every right to be sad, it's rejection, but she's feeding into her insecurity towards herself, breeding anger, and then pointing it in the wrong direction. With prudence as a foundation, she would be able to maintain her sense of reason, that it is not her fault, nor his fault, and be able to set herself on the right path of grieving what could be, and taking the necessary action to move on without anger towards anybody. Next scenario. Alright, we have one friend who's very upset at his other friends because they refused to help him in his time of need, and just lied to be able to do what they wanted instead. Very not cool of them. This might look a little more similar to that stereotypical look of Sloth, due to the quote-unquote friends having a very lazy and unenthusiastic attitude. The aspect of Sloth I want to emphasize here is the picture of someone who has a pretty extreme depiction of apathy. This is due to Sloth sometimes appearing as an extinguished desire to maintain relationships with others. Obviously, the two friends here want to downplay the seriousness of their actions, and in doing so, they're invalidating their friend's feelings about being lied to and, for lack of a better term, abandoned after asking for help. This depiction of Sloth references a more traditional understanding that focuses on the sense of indifference that appears during a stressful situation. The two friends not only lied to get out of helping the other friend, but after being confronted, they did not put in the effort of trying to salvage their friend's trust. They didn't even put effort into pretending to care in the face of the consequences. As a result, the friend, seeing that they didn't care, cut them off because he realized that he can't maintain a friendship with people that won't put in work to maintain it themselves. In this case, sloth is the way the two friends avidly avoid the work required of them from personal relationships and obligations. Diligence, by definition, would be to actively fight against this urge to avoid the work and to engage directly with the problems surrounding their friendship. It would be to not shy away from these problems, not to shy away from the friend asking something of you, but to inconvenience yourself slightly for the benefit of the community. As the popular saying goes, everyone wants a village, but no one wants to be a villager.